Krishna, today I have a very esteemed privilege to interview with two stalwarts of Krishna consciousness movement, Banabhatta Prabhu and Rishabdev Prabhu. So Banabhatta Prabhu, he performed so many things in ISKCON from 1970s onwards, book distribution, temple presidency, and also mainly he ran the Vrindavan 24-hour Kirtan for a couple of more than 2 years. And Rishabdev Prabhu, he joined the movement in Columbus, and he's played a pivotal role to establish Columbus Temple and so many things he did in ISKCON. So today we are here to discuss about new Yamuna Valley project. So Banabhatta Prabhu, can you give us a small glimpse about your journey in ISKCON and what you did so far, and how you got in touch with Srila Prabhupada? Just briefly. Yeah.
It was actually my brother who introduced me to Krishna consciousness when I was a high school student, and I ended up just going to one semester of college in a small liberal arts school in New Hampshire, and then after one semester I was pretty much disillusioned with any kind of further education. I quit school, hitchhiked out to California, eventually met the devotees and joined the San Francisco Temple in 1972. Shortly after that, I was asked to go to Japan to raise funds for the Vrindavan temple and the Mayapur temple as well. The first wave of devotees who went to India from America, it was quite astounding to people, especially in Mumbai. The devotees would go out in Harinam, and people couldn't believe, how is it these people from this meat-eating culture of America are becoming better Vaishnavas than them. And so there were some front page articles that came out saying maybe they're CIA agents. So Prabhupada knew that if he had established, at least he felt strongly that if he established important temples in these major holy places like Vrindavan and Mayapur, it would add authenticity and some firm foundation for the movement in India, and it would add a lot of prestige. And so I went with a small group of devotees to Japan, where we heard there was a Buddhist culture. People respected monks. They were very charitable. So we went and raised donations on the street, collected millions of dollars to help build Vrindavan and Mayapur. Then I did. Before that, I was doing book distribution in San Francisco. Then I worked with Vaishesika and Tripurari Maharaj for a while in Chicago, distributing books. Went down to South America, where we developed book distribution down in Colombia. And then I moved to Miami, where I was asked to be temple president in Miami Beach in the early, that was about 1980. And then I went to San Francisco to work with Bhaktiswarup Damodar Maharaj, the Bhaktivedanta Institute in San Francisco. At that time also, Vaishesika moved up. We did book distribution at the airport, just the two of us, for many years in San Francisco. Then I took over the restaurant. There were 3 restaurants at that time in San Francisco. And one wasn't doing too well. I became inspired to distribute prasadam, so I took over the restaurant. I developed that in San Francisco and ran that for about 8 years. and then moved to LA for a number of years to the community there, and then did various things, Harinam, book distribution, and then I went to India where I met my old friend Panchagoda Prabhu, who runs the Krishna Balaram temple. He asked me to take over 24-hour kirtan which I did for a couple of years, and somehow in a circuitous route I ended up in New Vrindavan, where I was actually initiated in 1973, but never really spent much time here because then the movement was spreading really fast, and we just, we were brahmacharis, we just went wherever we were asked to go. But I became inspired to stay here, and I've been here for a couple of years, and now by the association of exalted Vaishnavas like Rishabdev Prabhu and Yudhisthira Prabhu, who's been working tirelessly to develop, to establish Prabhupada's original instructions for New Vrindavan for self-sufficiency. So I've been working with these devotees, and we have an aspiring project that we're hoping is in the first stages of taking off and setting an example of how we can, go back to the land and develop simple living and high thinking and establish these principles that Prabhupada, especially the last year he was on the planet, he put so much effort into convincing us that this is what we need to do. We need to develop Varnasrama. We need to head back to the land and protect cows, develop the land, and become independent as much as possible from this demoniac materialistic society.
Thank you, Prabhu. Rishabdev Prabhu, can you give the audience a brief glimpse of your journey in Krishna consciousness?
As Bhagavata was talking, I was thinking it would be better if maybe I start from where I am now and go back. Because, you go back 50 years and it was like a lot of ups and downs and stops and goes and this way and that way. And, Krishna takes you through all kinds of different dimensions as you're advancing in your own Krishna consciousness. But I actually moved here back 7 years ago, and I retired from being a Vaishya, being in the brokerage business. And when I came here, I began working with Gurnath Raj, who was in charge of devotee development, congregational development. And by talking to him and working with him and Jai Krishna, they decided that they would like to get me engaged in fundraising and a couple other projects. Gurnath Raj and I worked on developing the Yogashala that's currently here. And the other project that they asked me to do was work on Prabhupada's Palace and get the palace recognized as a National Historic Landmark. So it took a couple years. I worked with the Department of Culture here in West Virginia and wrote a grant, developed the whole structural history of the palace and so on that is needed to get the palace recognized. They ended up approving the palace, I think almost 2 years now, with the Department of Culture here in West Virginia. We had to actually go to a vote of the department, and they voted 10-1 to allow the palace to become a historic landmark. And then from there it went to the Interior Department and Parks Department, and finally got Prabhupada recognized as a historic personality. And I think that was a great achievement. In the process, Yudhisthira and I have been friends many years, and I started working with Yudhisthira and seeing what we can do to develop his acreage. He has like 12 acres that he wants to donate, put into a land trust, and he's doing that for the purpose of his estate planning. And he's decided to pass on, I think, about 10 to 12 acres to the future generation of devotees. And Bhanabhata last year was able to buy a property next door to Yudhishthira's from Jai Prabhupada. There's a couple acres there with a modular home that we're currently renovating. And we also developed a 501c3 temple project there. And along with Yudhishthira, we established a 501d, which is a sadhusanga devotees, more in line with doing business, doing Vaishya work there on the farm to maintain the congregation and to establish an economic base. And then they've decided to put the land into a 501c2, which is a land holding company. So no one owns the land. The land's going to be given to Krishna, and we live on the land as beneficiaries. And then the property can be leased out to devotees, and they can put a cabin or two on the site, and we could maybe start developing a sustainable community of Krishna devotees. Going back from there, I retired in my business in 2012, and during that period, I was involved with the Columbus Temple. But the temple that's currently there, we actually started that in 1981. Karusha and I and Janak, we were able to convince Prabhupada Bhaktipad to let us have his deities that were here. So we brought Radha Matavara to Columbus. And from 1980, the Columbus Temple has been growing very nicely. I think they have 200-300 devotees there now. They're buying land and so on. I met Prabhupada early in my life. I was 18, 19 years old. I was a freshman at OSU. And at the time, Harigriva was there. They had just leased the property here in New Vrindavan. So Harigriva was an associate professor at OSU, and he was teaching, I think, freshman English at the time. And he also had, through the Free University off campus, he was teaching Bhagavad Gita. And I happened to meet devotees on campus and started going to the Sunday program and enjoying Prasadam and chanting, and got slowly more and more involved with the devotees. And then shortly afterwards, Prabhupada was invited to come to campus and speak at Hitchcock Hall with Allen Ginsberg. And Allen was coming to do a poetry session, and it was kind of like an anti-war movement thing. And Harigriva, of course, had been good friends with Allen Ginsberg, and they'd done a number of programs out in California with the Mantra Rock thing and things like that. So it was a natural progression to lease Haggerty Hall. And I think we got about 800 people there who were chanting and dancing with Prabhupada. It was so exciting. We also established the first Bhakti Yoga Club in Columbus. It was, when we first named it, was called the OSU Yoga Club. And then when Prabhupada found out that it was called the Yoga Club, he said, no, you have to call it the OSU Bhakti Yoga Club and recognize Krishna. And, from that point on, I lived in the temple for a couple of years. We traveled throughout the Midwest, Janivas and I, and a few other devotees. And we, of course, were always a satellite of New Vrindavan at the time. So we're constantly coming back and forth from Columbus to New Vrindavan and doing Harinam. And we were actually one of the first distributors of incense right from here, Spiritual Sky Incense. I think it started in Boston, but we also had a facility here for that. And, we bring the money back, and Kirtananda and Harigriva were buying property at the time. I think we were buying acres for $150 an acre. So that's how we moved down from the Old Vrindavan farm, took over Bahulaban down there. And, from there, Prabhupada, of course, from Columbus came here in 1969 and spent a month here before he went to Europe to meet the Beatles and, do his tour of Europe and so on. And I was fortunate enough to come here when he was here in, I believe, June of 1969, and, spend time here and actually witness Prabhupada living on the land, which was so transcendental. Going forward, I'm hoping we can work with Yudhishthira and Bhanabhata and with Prasadnata Atama and complete our project of trying to establish a nice, Krishna conscious community off campus here, and live our life peacefully and quietly, chanting Krishna and eating prasadam. Right?
Yeah.
What else is there? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Thank you for sharing. You decided at this, in 70s to take this project. What is your vision for this project for next 10 years? Like, Banabhatta Prabhu, you bought the house there, renovating. It's such a substantial investment. You traveled all over the world, saw so many places. But you decided to stay in New Vrindavan. It's a huge commitment. So what what is the vision?
Well, I think I have to put it into a philosophical perspective, because at this stage of my life, as the days and months and years pass, I realize that my breaths, are becoming more and more limited, and I want to try to make sure that whatever I do, I'm maximizing the eternal, the payback for the eternal debt that we all owe Srila Prabhupada for bringing us Krishna consciousness. And it says that for example, Srila Prabhupada got his instruction from his spiritual master when he was a young man. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wasn't even his spiritual master, but immediately saw, here's an educated Indian, speaks good English. He immediately asked him, please help spread this movement of Krishna consciousness all over the world. And in our tradition, it says the order of the spiritual master should be one's life and soul. It should be that important. So if we examine the life of Srila Prabhupada, we see that there was different emphasis during different times. In the last year that Srila Prabhupada was alive on this planet, he was focused so much on the development of Varnasrama. In fact, it was asked that Srila Prabhupada, you're getting ready to leave this world. Is your biggest lamentation that you didn't, complete Srimad Bhagavatam? Prabhupada said no. The greatest lamentation I have is that I've not been able to develop Varnasrama. So Prabhupada left us specific directions, kept trying to convince us. We were all still pretty much young, immature kids at the time. Prabhupada talked so much about farms and about self-sufficiency and about Varnasrama. So, and his whole time he was in New Vrindavan. If you examine the conversations Prabhupada had, he was really hopeful that New Vrindavan would set the example for the rest of the movement, which would embody this concept of simple living and high thinking. And I just feel that at this stage of my life, this is my last chance, I feel, to really try to please Srila Prabhupada. And I feel that, Prabhupada was not a small-minded man. He didn't have simply an institutional mindset. He wanted to distribute Krishna consciousness to the masses. And I feel inspired to have met Rishabdev Prabhu and Yudhishthira Prabhu, who I feel are very sincere and are directly empowered by Prabhupada to help put these essential instructions of Srila Prabhupada that he mentioned within even the incorporation of ISKCON in his writings of Gita Nagari that he wrote in the 50s. I feel fortunate to have met Rishabdev, who's expert at putting these essential instructions of Srila Prabhupada in a legal format so we have specific direction. And I think that's really important. And with this small contingent of sincere devotees, I feel that this is kind of a last-ditch effort to really establish Prabhupada's Back to the Land movement and create a whole preaching field that has pretty much been untapped to date. I mean, you look at the whole environmental movement and what's happening. I mean, even the kid who bags groceries at the grocery store, has a heart for somehow or other, giving back to the earth and helping, relieve the earth of this huge burden. People are realizing that we've been dumping on the earth. So I think this is an incredible opportunity, and I think if like-minded devotees like myself, Shabdev, Yudhisthira, Prasannatma Prabhu work together, that if we have Prabhupada's blessings, that it's maybe we can do something that can turn the tide of this demoniac civilization hell-bent on creating even more mass confusion and destruction.
Thank you for sharing that, Prabhu. So for our audience, can you please explain what is Varnashram?
Rishabdev, explain.
Varnashram to me is very simple. I think it means more like devotee care and survival as we go forward. And how do we work together to maintain a community of devotees in such a way that Prabhupada explains as, how do you say it? Vaira.
Yukta Vairagya.
Yukta
Vairagya.
I'm sorry. Sanskrit tongue twists me. But it's to sacrifice our lives to living simply for Krishna and to develop our Krishna consciousness in a way that is not possible, I don't think, in the city. Because there's so much going on in the city with, survival there. It's much easier to survive here, in my opinion. Yeah. And I was just reading the other day that West Virginia is becoming one of the top states where people are actually migrating here because of its simplicity and because of the beautiful surrounding, the woods and the mountains and the rivers and the natural beauty that's here. People are gravitating here. So Prabhupada had a vision of this beautiful, tranquil setting 50 years ago. And unfortunately, maybe unfortunately, who knows, we're still trying to develop that. Yeah. So when we were working on getting the palace recognized as a historic landmark, the vision I had for it was that, people come there to see the temple. Not only do they see the structure, but they see Prabhupada's Vanu and Vapi, his instructions, and you actually get to see people living in the, on the farm, with the cows and the bulls and without machinery and, the simple life that we had back in the 70s. And I think all of us older devotees, we have this nostalgic vision of what New Vrindavan was back then, with 400 or 500 people just living in tents and, wherever they could sleep and so on, and then got so austere in this winter time and so on that, we want to see that happen. But I think what's happening is because of the way we're structured here in New Vrindavan with the 501c3, horizontal, vertical management system we have, the land is not being used for devotees to live on. Unfortunately, the way the management is going here, they're actually developing, they're developing more of urban type real estate development type program where they're actually reselling the land to the devotees, which I don't think was Prabhupada's original intention. So in order for us to actually have people come to the temple and actually see the devotees working and living the way Prabhupada envisioned, we're doing it on private property, and that's why it's so wonderful that Yudhisthira and Bhadabhata have stepped up, and as their estate plan, they're going to put their land into a land trust that is owned by Krishna. We're the beneficiaries of the land, and we can control it, but the land can then pass through and pass on to the next generation of devotees. So we're developing a prototype, actually, that hopefully maybe we can copy the system that we're developing on their property and other locations here in New Vrindavan, and see that type of real estate development go forward. Just like some devotees may want to own land and have private property, but a lot of devotees may not want that. They come here with no money, and they come here to live a simple life, and land should be made available to them. And devotees come here, they're not going to be able to afford to buy the land, go to the bank, borrow $200,000-$300,000 to build a house, and they have to have, the income to support themselves. I don't see where that's going to be possible. So my hope in the next 3 to 5 years would be that we can convince our management here to change their philosophy and donate 1,000 acres, 100 acres or 150 acres. They could be put into a land trust so we can build a village there and have agriculture and so on. And I think Prabhupada wanted it to be democratic. It wanted to be bottom up, not top down. And so that's what we're doing with Yudhisthira's property and Bhadabhata's property. And hopefully from there we can move down the hill. We have Mukunda that, has the land right there next to the river. That's flat bottom land, very nice land for grains, because that's what Prabhupada wanted us to ultimately grow grains, and anna, very fundamental. And then we have 2 ox that Yudhisthira spoke to you about today that he's training. So we want to use the ox for that purpose and not use machinery and tractors and so on. So that's the goal.
So, Bhanabhatta Prabhu, what is second half means? Like, what is the significance of it?
Second half refers to the Varnashram, establishment of Varnashram that most devotees consider that there, is the uncompleted part of Srila Prabhupada's legacy, shall we say, or Srila Prabhupada's establishment of Krishna consciousness here. And because Prabhupada, first of all, he didn't know how long Krishna was going to allow him to stay here. He was already getting older. He was putting so much effort into translating Srimad Bhagavatam, opening temples, book distribution, so many things were established. But he knew that to actually spread Krishna consciousness to the masses, he would have to develop Varnashram. Now, the concept of Varnashram is something that Prabhupada has wrote about in the Bhagavatam, because Varnashram means the system of 4 ashrams and the system of 4 orders, social orders, by which society is divided according to a person's propensity, materially as well as spiritually. And that system was originally developed by Krishna. And if we look historically in the history of India, for example, that system was set up very scientifically, and because of the nature of Kali Yuga and the nature of the world today, although everyone falls into a different category, we have intellectuals, which would be the Brahmins in Vedic Varnasrama culture. We have the administrators, which is also the martial class. We have the administrators here. We're the Kshatriyas in Vedic times, and also protecting the citizens. Then the Vaishyas, or the mercantile order, and then the Shudras, or the workers. So this system is already set up and existing since time immemorial, but the lines between all these different orders have been blurred nowadays, and Prabhupada said it's impossible to establish Varnashram as it originally was. So he called it Daivi Varnashram, which is a system based on really on the development of Krishna consciousness, and taking understanding what different people's proclivities are, but being able to engage them in such a way so it's more of a natural transition. And Varnashram is such kind of an elusive concept nowadays. There's been so many debates and so many talks about how to actually institute it. But I think, as Rishabdev Prabhu also mentioned, that starting with the farm, it will develop in much more of an organic way. Mm-hmm. Because nowadays in Vedic, ancient Vedic culture, business meant, Vaishyas meant agriculture. Agriculture was everything. They didn't have industrial enterprises. And so when there were extra agricultural products, then there was business was created, and everything was centered around, this agriculture though. And nowadays it's become so topsy-turvy. And I also feel personally, because I've witnessed and I've observed in my own experience in Krishna consciousness, living in so many city temples, over time I really started feeling that these deep, meaningful Vaishnava relationships we're trying to develop, which are essential also in the development of our Krishna conscious communities, is not going to be possible in the cities for a number of reasons. And I feel essentially it's because also, especially being Western born, we have this, we were born with this, kind of addictive mentality towards immediate gratification. And our whole system of economics and of sociology and of education, it really is based upon this principle. And although we know that food is not produced in the store, there's a huge psychological impact when we spend our life just getting this paper money, which basically has no face value or no intrinsic value, and we go and we buy food from the store. It's so detached from actual reality. And so I just feel that as we develop these self-sufficient farm communities, that there's so many benefits that we will realize from it. And as we develop this concept of developing Prabhupada's second half of his mission, I think essentially because we are taking first and foremost, we're whatever struggles may be there, we understand that this is Prabhupada's desire for us to set an example for the world, and if we do this, we will obtain the blessings of Srila Prabhupada, and by his blessings, it becomes successful.
Thank you, Prabhu. And Rishabdev Prabhu, for people who don't know Prabhupada or ISKCON or Krishna consciousness, how do you explain this new Yamuna Valley project? Like, especially the way I understand is back to earth, friends, high quality relationships, sharing and gifting, developing sustainability. But I want to hear from you, like in simple terms, how do you explain to, you can say non-devotees?
Well, you got to just start from where Yudhisthira is. For example, he's on his property there, and he lives there with his wife and his son. And throughout the years, he's developed his gardens, and he has a wonderful water system that is established there. And he's built many cabins, very rustic cabins. Yet at the same time, he needs to support himself.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did for him was we established what's called a 501D by the IRS, and their definition is that a 501D is an apostolic association. We're calling it a sadhusanga, but it's the way that Yudhisthira can now make money to support his family and to support the his farm project. Through the 501D, we were able to enter in a contract, for example, with Eco Vrindavan, where he gets paid so much a month to train the ox that are up there. And that contract was made available because we have a corporation. And that corporation, in my view, is the Vaishya arm, the Vaishya side of the equation here, with the 501c3 temple side, which we've also established, and it's called Second Half Inc. And through the through the corporation, we can now own the land, because if an individual owns the land, now it's no longer a community. It's now an individual that owns it, and it's no longer the community. So the only way to do this, that I can tell, based on the law and what the government gives us, is that we have to incorporate. So the idea was, since Prabhupada didn't want the people living in the temple, like the Brahmins, the Pujaris, and so on, that are the temple side of the equation, he didn't want them getting salaries. He wanted them to be taken care of with a place to live and prashadam and education and so many things that they were getting. Whereas at the same time, when you're living in the city, that's okay to do that, But when you're in the country here, it gets more complicated, because you have to create your own job here. So you have to be able to separate, I think, what's going on in the temple with what's going on in the business Vaishya farming community. There has to be some separation there in order for, I think, to work properly. So as far as the 501D is concerned, what's unique about it is that whoever is part of that sangha, the money all goes into a central treasury. That's one of the requirements of the IRS. And the other requirement is that we have to follow the tenets of the founder, which is Srila Prabhupada. And then as the community makes money, the money is then distributed in the form of dividends. So everybody gets a piece of the pie, so to speak. Whereas here in New Vrindavan, that doesn't happen. You got the money flowing into the 501c3, which is this vertical system that they have here, where they actually, if you read the corporations, we're not even members. It's a non-member board, and they decide what to do with the money. And who knows? I mean, it's not very transparent. I've always recommended that money that comes in with fracking and donations, so on, in my opinion, should be distributed in the form of dividends to the devotees that live here, so that they can establish their house and they can establish their system. They can pay for healthcare. They can pay for their children's education. I think that's what's lacking, and that's, I think, what we're trying to fix. You know, if you want to really get down to, you know, where the rubber meets the road. So we have Eco Vrindavan, for example. They do a really good job maintaining the cows, and they have greenhouses, and they grow a lot of vegetables. But the vegetables and the salads and the greens that they grow is only 20% of our caloric intake. In order for us to get together 80%, we have to grow grains. And that's the other thing that's missing here that we hope we can correct. So, it's a practical, I think it's a very practical way of going about this. And like I say, through studying so many of Prabhupada's instructions and so on, and my own experience in financial planning and fundraising and so on, I think this is a workable system for us. If we can get the rest of New Vrindavan to buy into it. But you first start with the idea. The idea can grow. The seed has to be planted. So the whole process grows organically from the bottom up, and that's the way Krishna creates. He creates organically from the bottom up. So that's basically as simple as I can explain it. Not sure
So
people
we'll
understand it, but
thank you so much for sharing. And to close the interview, can you explain in our own terms, in a simple way, about this project, and then we'll close the interview.
I think I've already kind of explained what it is. I mean, we're just, trying to create an association of like-minded devotees and try to manifest Srila Prabhupada's instructions, which he left up to us, and with like-minded devotees working to please the spiritual master. And Prabhupada himself said before he left that your love for me will be tested by how you cooperate. So we're looking to create a sangha of other similarly like-minded devotees, and to help encourage each other in our Krishna consciousness, and see this is a great experiment. It's a great adventure. Actually, I feel this for me is kind of the culmination of my life, and really an exciting adventure. It's a mystery. We don't know how it's going to exactly unfold, but to take the experience that each of us have, and to combine that, and to develop our these nice Vaishnava relationships in an environment that's based on depending upon Mother Nature's simple gifts, like Prabhupada envisioned for us. Certainly there must be all kind of unseen benefits that will develop from this. And if we can set an example that will inspire other people outside, because Prabhupada himself prophesied that there would be mass unemployment within our lifetime. There would be millions of people living in the cities. And we're already seeing it today, just with this whole, COVID thing that's going on. There's, as much as we all would like the world to come back to normal, we're understanding more and more it may never, at least within our lifetime. And there's a huge question about basic food security and things. So as the days pass, we become even more convinced that what we're doing is right from so many different perspectives, not just spiritual perspective, but materially as well.
Thank you so much for your time.
I'd like to say something
please.
Before we close.
Yes.
Anyone that's interested in getting more information, we do have a Facebook page. Go to New Yamuna Valley Farm, and you can see all the posts that are there. More importantly, we have many videos of Eudister walking the property and explaining, how he wants to develop it and so on. So I encourage as many of you to go to the page and read more and join. We also have a website now called secondhalfinc.company.site, and you can go there as well to get more information. And our phone numbers are there, our email is there, so you're welcome to contact us and come visit us and help us out by giving some donation if you can. That would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prasanna.
Hare Krishna.